this video, I'm going to walk you through the last part of Activity 8, starting at page 4. On this page, you're making up your own experiment and filling in some information about it. It's just an imaginary experiment. First, you need to make up the names of your 12 people. To make things easier, I'll have you just make up initials for each person. So just fill in 2 letters for each person. So person 1 could be GC, person 2 could be something else, and some other 2 letters. And do that for all 12 people. So yeah, just make up 2 letters to identify each person and fill them in these blanks. Next, make up an independent variable. So decide what independent variable you're going to manipulate in your experiment. And it's up to you what to pick within certain constraints. And I'll explain what those constraints are in just a moment. So if you decide that you're going to assign group 1 to one temperature and group 2 to a different temperature, your independent variable would be temperature. Or if you decide that you're going to have group 1 sleep a certain number of hours and group 2 sleep a different number of hours, your independent variable would be hours of sleep. So the independent variable is what you're exposing people to different levels of. Each group has its own level of the independent variable. And I said that you could pick whatever you want, but the constraint is the dependent variable that you're recording is exam scores. So in this experiment, you're going to be trying to test the effect of something on exam performance, and you're going to be recording an exam score from each participant. So think of something that might have an effect on exam scores, and make that your independent variable. And it could be anything you want as long as you think that it would have an effect on exam scores, and as long as it's something that could be tested in an actual experiment. So if you decide to test the effect of temperature on exam scores, that's fine. You would just write temperature here, and you would write the temperature of group 1 in this blank, and write the temperature of group 2 in this blank. Those are your 2 levels, your 2 selected levels. Because group 1 gets level 1, group 2 gets level 2. And the 2 temperatures could be whatever you want as long as they make sense. So they could be 50, 80. They could be 60, 85. But you wouldn't want them to be something like 20 and 100 because that's probably too extreme. Or so your independent variable could be something else. If you decide hours of sleep, you would put hours of sleep here, and you would write 1 hours of sleep here for what group 1 is going to get, and another number here for what group 2 is going to get. So you might put 4 hour, 6 hour, 0 hour, 8 hour, as long as they make sense. So you wouldn't want to pick something like 0 hours and 60 hours because that's not possible on a single night. So once you pick your independent variable and you've decided on your 2 levels and you've written all of that in, you have to assign 6 people to group 1 and 6 people to group 2. So just pick 6 people and put their initials here in these blanks, and take the other 6 people and write their initials in here for group 2. And now you've assigned your participants to the 2 groups. And in a real experiment, it should be done randomly, but you don't have to do random assignment in this activity because the random assignment isn't really what I'm emphasizing right here. I'm trying to emphasize other concepts. So you could just do it non-randomly and just pretend that it's random if you want. Next, you need to pick a time of day, a specific time of day, like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. And that's going to for each person. So each person has to have their time of day that they're tested. So this would be the time of day that person 1 is tested at. This would be the time of day that person 2 is tested at, and so on. And write the temperature of the room that they're going to be tested at. So so this would be the temperature of the room that person 1 takes the exam in. This would be the temperature of the room that person 2 takes the exam in. And give each person a testing time in minutes, which is the number of minutes that the person has to take the exam. So um, this would be the number of this blank would be the number of minutes that person 1 has to take the exam. This blank would be the number of minutes that person 2 has to take the exam, and so on. Um, Now, you can make up anything you want to fill in these blanks, um, as long as it's possible, and as long as you follow some directions that I have in the directions. Um, well, the directions are actually in a separate file that I uploaded, so you can refer to that as I'm talking. So for each, so these 3 columns are extraneous variables. They're variables that could affect exam scores, but they're variables that aren't being studied because they're not your independent variable. They're just outside influences. Um, so these are actually just 3 things that could throw off the results of your experiment, possibly. So um, in the directions, I said for each extraneous variable, either control it, um, balance it, or make it a confounding variable. One of those 3 things. Um, so if I say to control time of day, that means every person is going to be at the same time of day. Um, for example, 9 a.m. all the way down, or 10 a.m. all the way down would be control. So when you control an extraneous variable, you make it equal for everyone. So if in my directions, if I say to control time of day, I'm actually meaning for you to pick the same time of day for all 12 people, all the way down. And it can be whatever time of day you want, but it has to be the same for all 12 people. So you could put 9 a.m. for everyone. You could put 10 a.m. for everyone. You could put 11 a.m. for everyone. The time of day doesn't matter as long as you follow the directions and make it controlled. Um, Now, if I say to balance time of day, then what that means is pick 2 different times of the day. Like it could be 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. It could be 10 a.m. and noon. Just 2 different times of the day, and make group 1 half and half, and make group 2 also half and half. So if group 1 was half 10 and half 12, and group 2 was also half 10, half 12, that would be balanced. So if it was 10, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12, and 10, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12, that's balanced. Um, so like I said, if I say to control it, then pick a time of day and put that same exact time of day for everyone, all 12 people. If I say to balance it, um, then make it half and half for group 1 and half and half for group 2. Um, now, um, if I say to make it a confounding variable, then that means I'm telling you to make it unequal between the groups. And the simplest way to do that would be to um, pick a time of day for everyone in group 1 and pick a different time of day for everyone in group 2. So if group 1 was all 9 a.m. and group 2 was all noon, that would be time of day would now be a confounding variable because it is unequal between the 2 groups. Group 1 is earlier, group 2 is later. Or if you did, let's say, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for group 1, and then all threes for group 2, that would be confounding because it wouldn't be equal. Um, and so, like I said, that's the simplest way to make it a confounding variable. Um, so for each extraneous variable, um, let's see, for each extraneous variable, either control it, balance it, or make it a confounding variable based on my directions. And the specific values that you pick don't matter as long as you follow the directions. The same thing for temperature. Based on my directions, either control it, balance it, or make it a confounding variable. And other than that, you can pick whatever temperature you like, um, as long as it's possible, or as long as it's would be realistic. And for testing time, um, pick whatever testing time you think um, would work for an exam, and either balance it, control it, or make it a confounding variable. So, and once you do that, you're finished with the first three columns, and we move on to your exam scores, your dependent variable. So for your dependent variable, you have to make up each person's exam score, um, and just make a two-digit exam score for each person, like 75, 90, 85, and do it for all 12 people. And when you make them up, um, they can be whatever you want, but do your best to try to take into account um, your independent variable and your extraneous variables. Um, so think about, like for person one, think how well would this person probably do um, if they were in this condition and they were also tested at this time of day, at this temperature, and with this testing time, and then make up whatever you want. Um, then calculate the mean of group one, the mean exam score. So add up the 6 exam scores, divide by 6. Calculate the mean exam score of group two, add the 6 numbers, divide by 6. Um, and before we move on, I want to talk just a little bit more about control, balancing, and confounding um, of the extraneous variables. So if an extraneous variable is controlled and it's the same number, the same value for everyone, um, then it's equal between the groups and it's not a confounding variable. And the experiment is not going to be biased by that variable. For example, if group one is, well, if everyone is tested at 9 a.m., then group one is 9 a.m., group two is 9 a.m. The two groups are equal in time of day. And it's since the two groups are equal, it's not a confounding variable and it's not a problem for the experiment. Um, and if you balance an extraneous variable like time of day, um, it also becomes equal between the groups because if group one is half 9 a.m., half noon, and group two is half 9 a.m., half noon, the two groups are equal, right? Um, at least on average, and it's not a problem for the experiment. Um, it's not going to affect the results. So basically, control and balancing are good, and confounding is bad. Um, and control and balancing are two ways to avoid getting a confounding variable. Okay. So for page 5, um, what I want you to do here is um, make up another experiment. So make up, once again, um, make up the initials of your 12 people, and then fill in the initials for group 1 and the initials for group 2. Um, and um, it's fine if you just copy everything from page 1 because so it could be up here, it could be the same 12 names, and right here it could be the same 6 names. Here it could be the same 6 names. Um, that's fine. And your